Hello, beautiful souls. I hope this moment finds you surrounded by people who truly see you, who love you not for who they want you to be, but for who you are right now. Today, I want to share something with you, a story that might make your heart ache a little, but I promise it will also remind you of something powerful, something we all need to remember. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you couldn't see the shadows they cast? Have you ever been so certain about a person that you pushed away the very people trying to catch you before you fell? Sometimes, the person we think is our enemy is actually our guardian angel in disguise. Sometimes, the voice we silence is the one that would have saved us from our own choices. This is Maya's story. It's about betrayal, yes. But it's also about the kind of love that waits in the darkness, even when we've turned our backs on it. The kind of love that doesn't demand to be right. It just demands to be there when we finally understand. So take a deep breath with me. Let your heart open just a little wider. Because sometimes, the most beautiful stories are born from the most broken places. Let's walk through Maya's journey together and discover what it really means to come home. Maya Rodriguez wakes up every morning at 6:30, not because she has to, but because she chooses to. There's something about those quiet moments before the world demands her attention that feels sacred to her. She makes her coffee in the same small mug her mother gave her for her 21st birthday, the one with the tiny chip on the handle that she refuses to throw away. From the outside, Maya's life looks perfectly ordinary. She works as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm downtown, drives a reliable Honda that's seen better days, and lives in a studio apartment that she's decorated with plants and fairy lights to make it feel like home. Her co-workers see her as the reliable one, the one who always meets her deadlines and remembers everyone's birthdays. But there's something else about Maya that people notice. She has this way of lighting up when she talks about the future. Her eyes get this distant, dreamy look, like she can see something beautiful just beyond the horizon. She talks about dreams the way other people talk about certainties. Marriage, a house with a garden, maybe children someday. All painted in soft, hopeful colors. What people don't see is the weight she carries in her chest, the pressure she puts on herself to prove that she's grown up, that she can make her own choices. Maya loves deeply, maybe too deeply. She sees potential in people where others see warning signs. She believes in second chances, in the power of love to change everything. Her mother, Sarah, watches her daughter with the kind of careful love that comes from raising a child alone. She sees Maya's generous heart, but she also sees how easily it can be taken advantage of. The conversations between them have become careful dances around a subject they both know is there, but neither wants to name. Maya doesn't know it yet, but she's standing at the edge of a choice that will change everything she thinks she knows about love. Maya's world before everything changed was painted in soft, predictable colors. Every Tuesday, she'd stop at the corner bakery on 5th Street, where Mrs. Chen would already have her blueberry muffin wrapped and waiting. The elderly woman would smile and ask about her mother, and Maya would always say Sarah was doing well, even when she knew her mom was working another double shift at the hospital. At the office, Maya was the one people came to when they needed something done right. She wore her favorite cardigan on Mondays, the cream-colored one with the tiny pearl buttons that made her feel professional and put together. Her desk was organized in a way that made her coworkers slightly envious. Color-coded folders, a small succulent named George, and a framed photo of her and her mother from last Christmas. But the center of Maya's universe wasn't her job or her routines. It was Jake. Every lunch break, her phone would buzz with his messages, and that familiar flutter would dance in her stomach. She'd find herself smiling at nothing, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she typed back. Her co-workers noticed how she'd check her reflection in her computer screen before video calls, how she'd save the good snacks from the break room to bring home to him. On weekends, Maya's small apartment transformed into their sanctuary. She'd spend Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, carefully selecting ingredients for the dinners she'd cook for them. Jake would sleep in while she prepared everything, humming softly to herself as she chopped vegetables and imagined the home they'd build together someday. When he'd finally wake up, hair messy and eyes still heavy with sleep, he'd wrap his arms around her from behind and tell her she was too good to him. Those quiet Sunday afternoons felt like promises. Jake would talk about his plans, his big ideas, while Maya listened with the kind of attention you give to dreams you want to believe in. She'd trace patterns on his chest and picture their future. A house with a garden, maybe a dog, children who would have his smile and her determination. What Maya didn't realize was how carefully she'd begun editing her stories. When her mother asked about her weekend, Maya would mention the cooking and the movies they watched, but somehow forget to mention the money she'd lent him for his truck payment, or how he'd gotten quiet and distant when she brought up meeting her family again. Love, Maya had learned, sometimes meant protecting the person you loved from the doubts of others, even when those doubts were starting to whisper in your own heart. The phone call came on a Thursday evening while Maya was making dinner. Her mother's voice was careful, measured in the way that meant she was choosing her words like stepping stones across a dangerous water. Maya, honey, I need to talk to you about Jake's loan application. Maya's hand stilled on the wooden spoon. She'd been stirring the pasta sauce, humming softly, planning to surprise Jake with his favorite meal when he got home. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. I can't co-sign it, sweetheart. I've looked at his credit history, his employment records. I'm sorry, but I just can't. The words hit Maya like ice water, not because of the loan, she could figure out another way, but because of what this meant. Her mother didn't believe in Jake. Her mother didn't believe in them. You don't even know him, Maya heard herself saying, her voice rising higher than she intended. You've barely given him a chance. And now you're sabotaging our future. Maya, please, just listen. No, you listen. The spoon clattered to the counter. I have never asked you for anything. Not once. I put myself through college. I got my own apartment. I've been independent since I was 18. And the one time I ask for help, you say no because you don't like my boyfriend? Sarah's voice was soft, pleading. It's not about liking him, baby. It's about protecting you. The things I've seen in his background check. You ran a background check? Maya's chest felt like it was caving in. You actually hired someone to investigate the man I love? The silence on the other end was answer enough. Maya felt something fundamental shift inside her chest, like a bridge collapsing. All those careful conversations, all those gentle questions about Jake. It hadn't been concern. It had been an investigation. Her mother had been building a case against the person Maya wanted to spend her life with. I can't believe you, Maya whispered, and her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. All my life, you taught me to follow my heart, to trust my instincts. But the moment I do that, the moment I choose someone you didn't pick for me, suddenly I'm too stupid to know my own mind? That's not what this is. Yes, it is. The words came out sharp, final. You can't stand that I'm happy without you. You can't stand that someone else might love me more than you do. Maya could hear her mother crying softly on the other end, and for a moment, her resolve wavered. But then she thought of Jake, waiting for good news about their future, trusting her to make this happen. Don't call me again until you're ready to apologize, Maya said, and hung up. The kitchen was silent except for the bubbling sauce, burning now at the bottom of the pan. Maya stared at her phone, her hands shaking, feeling like she'd just set fire to the most important relationship in her life. for love, for Jake, for the future they were building together. It had to be worth it. It had to be. 6 months after Maya stopped speaking to her mother, she found herself sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, staring at her bank statement. The numbers didn't lie, even when everything else in her life felt like a carefully constructed illusion. Negative $437. The credit card she'd opened for Jake's emergency car repairs was maxed out. The savings account she'd built since college, the one that was supposed to be for their wedding, was empty. Jake was asleep in the next room, the same peaceful sleep he'd had every night while Maya lay awake calculating and recalculating their expenses, trying to make the math work, trying to make any of it work. She'd started making excuses without even realizing it. When her friends invited her out, she'd say she was tired instead of admitting she couldn't afford to split a pizza. When her coworkers asked about her engagement ring, the one Jake kept promising was coming soon, she'd change the subject. When her landlord called about late rent, she'd smile and promise it was just a bank error. Maya pulled her knees to her chest and let herself remember the last conversation with her mother. How Sarah's voice had shaken when she said Jake's name. How Maya had convinced herself that her mother's tears were manipulation, not heartbreak. The apartment felt different now in the darkness. Smaller. The fairy lights that used to make everything feel magical now looked cheap and desperate. The plants she'd bought to make their place feel like home were dying because Jake said watering them was a waste of time. She thought about the woman she used to be. The one who saved money and made careful plans. The one who trusted her instincts. When had she stopped listening to that voice inside her? When had Jake's voice become louder than her own? Maya reached for her phone, scrolling through months of unanswered messages from her mother. Birthday wishes, holiday greetings, a simple, thinking of you text from just last week. Sarah had never stopped trying, never stopped loving her, even when Maya had chosen to walk away. Her thumb hovered over her mother's contact. It would be so easy to call, to hear that familiar voice that had sung her to sleep as a child, that had cheered at her graduation, that had warned her about this exact moment. But pride is a heavy chain. And Maya wasn't ready to admit that everything her mother had seen, everything she'd tried to protect her from, had been true all along. Instead, she closed the phone and went back to bed, curling up next to the man who had slowly, carefully taken apart the life she'd built for herself. But something had shifted in those quiet moments on the bathroom floor, a crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. And through that crack, the truth was starting to seep in. Change doesn't always come like lightning. Sometimes it comes like dawn, slow, quiet, inevitable. Maya didn't know it yet, but the sun was already beginning to rise. The truth came to Maya on an ordinary Tuesday, in the most devastating way possible. She'd come home early from work, excited to surprise Jake with his favorite takeout from the Thai place across town. The apartment was quiet, but she could hear voices from the bedroom, his laugh, and another one, a familiar one. Maya stood frozen in her own hallway, holding containers of pad thai that were growing cold in her hands. Through the crack in the bedroom door, she could see Jake with her former best friend, Jessica. The same Jessica who had stopped returning Maya's calls months ago. The same Jessica who Jake had said was drama and not good for Maya anyway. They weren't just together. They were comfortable together. Like this had been happening for a long time. Maya didn't scream. She didn't throw the food or demand explanations. She just stood there, watching her life rearrange itself in front of her eyes, feeling something deep inside her chest finally break open. Later, after Jake had made his excuses and Jessica had gathered her things with fake tears and empty apologies, Maya found herself alone with the wreckage of everything she'd believed in, the credit card statements scattered across the kitchen table, the eviction notice Jake had hidden from her. The engagement ring receipt she discovered in his wallet. Dated 3 weeks ago, returned for cash. Maya sat in the silence of her stripped-down life and remembered something her grandmother used to say. Something that came back to her now like a prayer she'd forgotten she knew. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember who you really are. In that moment, Maya understood. She had been so afraid of being alone that she'd chosen to disappear instead. So desperate to be loved that she'd forgotten how to love herself. She thought about her mother's hands, always working, always giving. About the sacrifices Sarah had made without ever asking for gratitude. About love that protects instead of possesses. Love that warns instead of flatters. Maya reached for her phone, not to call Jake or demand answers or try to fix what couldn't be repaired. She called the one person who had never stopped believing in the woman she really was, even when Maya had forgotten her completely. "Mom?" she whispered into the phone. I think I need to come home." And for the first time in months, Maya heard her own voice clearly. Sarah didn't ask any questions when she picked Maya up that night. She just drove through the quiet streets while Maya sat in the passenger seat, holding a single suitcase and feeling like she was 13 again, coming home from a sleepover that had gone wrong. The house smelled like chamomile tea and the lavender candles her mother lit every evening. Maya had forgotten how safe that smell could make her feel. Sarah led her to her old bedroom, where the twin bed was already made with fresh sheets, and her favorite blanket from college was folded at the foot. "Get some rest, baby," Sarah whispered, kissing Maya's forehead the way she had when Maya was small and scared of thunderstorms. "Everything else can wait until tomorrow." The first week was quiet. Maya helped her mother with small things, folding laundry, grocery shopping, watering the garden that Sarah had been tending alone for months. They didn't talk much about Jake or the apartment or the mess Maya had left behind. Instead, they moved around each other with the careful gentleness of people learning to trust again. Maya started taking walks in the mornings, something she hadn't done in years. The neighborhood looked different now. Smaller than she remembered, but also more solid somehow. She'd pass Mrs. Patterson's house with its bright yellow door, and the old woman would wave from her garden, asking about Maya's mother with genuine warmth. Slowly, Maya began to remember who she had been before she'd tried so hard to become someone else. She found her old journals in the closet, pages filled with dreams that had nothing to do with anyone else's approval. She called her college roommate, who cried with relief when she heard Maya's voice. She applied for a new job at a company that valued her experience, not just her willingness to work for less than she was worth. The healing wasn't dramatic. It happened in small moments. When Maya caught herself laughing at something on TV, when she bought herself flowers just because she liked them, when she realized she hadn't checked her phone for Jake's messages in 3 whole days. One evening, while helping her mother make dinner, Maya looked up from chopping vegetables and said, "I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. You were right, and I was too proud to see it." Sarah set down her wooden spoon and pulled Maya into a hug that felt like coming home after being lost in the wilderness. "You don't need to apologize for learning to love yourself, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "That's all I ever wanted for you." 2 years later, Maya still makes her coffee in that same chipped mug. But now when she holds it, she thinks about the hands that gave it to her, the love that has waited patiently through every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment when she forgot who she really was. She has her own apartment again, a small place with a balcony where she grows herbs and flowers. Sometimes she catches herself humming while she waters them, the same way her mother hums while tending her garden. Some gifts, it seems, are passed down in the quietest ways. Maya learned something profound in those dark months when she thought love meant sacrifice, when she confused losing herself with finding someone else. She learned that the people who truly love us aren't the ones who tell us what we want to hear. They're the ones brave enough to tell us what we need to know, even when it hurts. Real love doesn't ask you to become smaller. It doesn't demand that you choose between your heart and your family, your dreams and your relationships. Real love sees you completely and still chooses to stay. Real love warns you about the cliff before you walk off it. Not because it wants to control your path, but because it wants you to have a path at all. Maybe you're thinking about someone in your own life right now. Someone whose voice you've been ignoring, whose concern you've mistaken for interference. Someone who sees things you can't see yet, who loves you enough to risk your anger in order to protect your heart. Or maybe you're thinking about someone you're worried about, someone who's walking toward their own cliff, and you're wondering if you should speak up, knowing they might not want to hear it. Love isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it's the hand that pulls you back from the edge. Sometimes it's the voice that says no when everyone else is saying yes. Sometimes it's the person who stays even when you walk away. Maya knows now that her mother's love wasn't trying to hold her back. It was trying to hold her together. And sometimes, that makes all the difference.